Welcome. Thank you. We are excited to have Sue West here today. My name is Allie Plunkett. I am a 2012 graduate of St. Ben's. I'm an attorney at Henson & Ephron Law Firm, and I've been involved in the St. Ben's Alumni Board Committee for some time. As many of you are aware, we have been doing this professional development event for several years now, and covering a variety of topics. And we appreciate all of your engagement so far, and we're excited to be able to have Sue here this morning. So Sue is going to be taking the lead. As there are questions, please feel free to take them in the chat. I'll be monitoring it, and then I'll be popping in with questions for Sue as they come up. Also, Sue is so passionate about this topic, which is awesome, that she's asked me to help her rein in the enthusiasm at certain times. So you may see me popping up and saying, Sue, come on, let's get the show on the road. But it's only because she's so passionate, which is so awesome and so exciting. So Sue Forsberg West was a 1987 graduate of St. Ben's. She graduated in social work. She is a passionate leader in human resources and brand executive. She's so great at aligning human resources with business objectives and really how to create a positive culture and coaching leaders to have results that are actually positive for your culture. As many of you know, culture is such an issue right now with the pandemic and working remotely. So Sue will be covering that as well. Sue lives in Maple Grove with her husband, Mike, an SJU alum from 1987. Her daughter, Kayla, is a Benny from my class, actually, and her son, Andrew, graduated in 2018 from St. John's. So I'm turning the reins over to Sue. Thank you so much. We're so excited. And there we go.
Well, hello. I appreciate you all being here today. It is such a treat to talk about a really important subject like culture, but in addition, talking about it with wonderful Johnnies and Bennies and maybe others is really a pleasure, and I appreciate it. On this slide, as part of the introduction, I'll just mention I've been overseeing HR groups for about 30 years or so, and I just tried to summarize some of the different organizations and industries that I have been a part of. And I think what's wonderful about working in culture is the gift of being able to just bring who you are to any organization, small or large or any industry. And so I feel really proud to have a great variety of different industries and size of businesses that I've been able to work for. The last 10 years I've been in Eagan. Oh my gosh, I'm in Maple Grove. So let's just say I must passionately love to drive a lot too. And then the final thing I'll share with you guys that I think is relevant to this is I just started a new job yesterday. So the technology at my old company and the technology at the new one yesterday and the technology in my house, let's just welcome culture that way, because I'm trying to figure it out. So I appreciate everybody's let's call it grace as we navigate. Adam and I identified this morning that our technology was not our friend. And so he is going to navigate today. So instead of me getting to kind of work through, we're going to work as a team and he's going to take us through the slides. But honestly, what a great way to start a culture presentation. So Adam, thank you very much. And you can head on to the next slide. And so really what my objective is today is really to take a moment and have respect and gratitude for the time we are in our history. Wow, this is very unique. None of us, whether we're early in our career, midway through our career, or kind of wrapping things up in our career, have been through a pandemic. So what a beautiful time to be working together in our private lives with our family and our friends and our communities, and then looking at our work environments and looking at what we're all experiencing today and realizing those that are more senior into their careers and those that are just leaving college and participating, we all get to collectively and individually impact history today. That's what this is about. Culture is about each one of us and our personal impact that we bring, and what a gift we're all going to have when we look back 10, 20, 50 years from now and remember this moment in time. If you absolutely take a minute to seize your opportunity, and I'm not referencing a movie right now, but we need to seize the day, everybody. So that's what this is really about, is each of us individually taking a moment to grab onto what we can and have an impact. All right, next slide. Today, what I want to cover is I have a little bit of reflections since I left St. Ben's. And then really what the presentation is broken into is 3 categories. One, talking about the definition of culture. The second is your personal opportunity to impact culture individually and with your team. And then the third is talking about how the pandemic has impacted our culture and may as we move forward. So that's really what we're focusing on. I'm going to probably be a little more heavy-handed and spend a little more time on the first categories. And then as we organically get through it, it'll be a little bit less towards the end of it. So for my time checkers, it's not an even Steven thing here. I had to like level set with the guys so we're not worrying that it's not exactly 10 minutes for each. And that's why these wonderful helpers like Allie are gonna help us stay on track. Because I know when we talk about things that we're really, that we care about and that we're passionate about, we can take a little more time than we expect. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to cover today. All right, next slide. All right, so guess what? I graduated in 1987, you guys, and a lot is identical to when I was there. So I love looking at history because history is about the foundation that we bring to a business or our communities or our neighborhoods, our passions, whatever they are. And I love that we are part of this beautiful organization with St. John's and St. Ben's. And there are so many elements that we're going to reference later that go back even 100 years. But for this example, for me in 87, what I love is there's still a Benny bus. Now you might call it the Link, and we called it the Benny bus, but it's the same thing, transportation on a bus with lots of fun and camaraderie and probably music and singing, I guess, between the 2 schools. So that is lovely to reference. Everything kind of can alter and evolve over time or yet stay the same. Another thing I think is funny that is really relevant to back then and now is the library. I don't know about you guys, but when we used to go to the library, we spent more time talking to our friends and excited to see our friends and actually study. We actually studied in our room. So that I'm sure is another common thing we have the pleasure to take forward. And what about the chapel walk? I don't know about you guys, but if anybody took you on a chapel walk, you might be hearing wedding bells. So it is pretty fun today to talk to a lot of Johnnies and Bennies, as I have the last 35 years, and hear them reminisce with a lot of warmth about their time going on the chapel walk. And of course, there's lots of school traditions. Pine Stalk, we called it Pine Stalk. You have it now called Pines. And then we have the father-daughter dances and fabulous study abroad programs and sororities and community giving. There's so much there. It's wonderful. And you can't forget about our community, beautiful St. Joe, Minnesota. And looking at these pictures, I'm sure you will get a kick out of Sal's and Kay's Kitchen, and of course, Bo Diddley's. And honestly, the booths are identical. My name is probably engraved on the side of one of them. And then the last thing I'll share with you that I love about it is this is kind of to give you insight. I was born and raised in a family-run company. And again, that's where culture is so relevant, evolving over time. And at Kay's Kitchen, I worked at Kay's Kitchen when I was there, but I was hired to clean toilets because they didn't think I could waitress. Now, really? I think we all know I'd probably be a pretty good waitress. But anyway, I was a toilet cleaner, and eventually I got promoted to be able to make salads. So I'm just sharing that with you because we can all do anything when we put our muscles into it. So that's just a little bit about how we all come together. And I'm really excited for those of you on the call today that can down the road for you in 20 or 30 or 40 years, be able to look back at this beautiful St. John's and St. Ben's experience and be able to see how much has actually stayed the same in such a beautiful, memorable way. Okay, next slide. And then on the flip side, a lot has changed. And I thought it would be fun just to show you literally a computer from 1983 when I went to St. Ben's, and computers today, same thing with cell phones. It is very fun. Now, what I want to mention to you that I think is very relevant about this is culture evolves over time. It is not something that generally happens in a day or a week. You don't generally set a plan and then change your culture the next day. And I love the examples of the computer and the cell phone because yes, they were alive in 1983 and 1987 when I graduated, but it has evolved and gotten perfected and tweaked over time. And that's like culture. When you look at the classes virtually that you guys have had to move into as it relates to the pandemic, now that's a much more abrupt change. And these things happen and have a big impact on our culture that's lifelong as well. But generally, culture happens more organically over time with lots of support and direction. But I think that's another really important factor that we also have to be ready to adapt at a last moment. Student directories, way back in my time, we had something called a student directory, and it had photos and names and lots of private information that you did not have a consent about. And boy, has that world changed. And finally, there's lots of beautiful amenity changes. Just like culturally at businesses, you might see more pool tables and gaming areas and social spaces. Also at St. John's and St. Ben's, their food is provided more grab and go in a lot of cases, lots more broader opportunities for classes and participation, flexibilities with how we share our lives together. So I thought that was just a really nice shout out on that. All right, next slide. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about culture. You can go to the next slide. So I want to open up the table real quickly. If anybody would like to share their point of view on how they might define workplace culture or their ideal culture, or just how you feel you contribute. I don't want to keep it too narrow because culture is all about your opinion and your perspective. So if anybody would like to share, you can put it in the chat, and then Allison or Adam is going to grab it and share it with you. All right, we got anybody willing to put something in there and share? I don't know, Adam and Allie, are you able to see the chat? Things are popping up.
Here. Okay, so what we're getting is my current workplace culture is flexible, trusting. Definition of culture. Culture is how our goals and values align for each individual. I work at General Mills, and culture is very important at our company. One thing I was going to add to the chat is I'm starting a softball team for our office so that we can see each other. That's my contribution.
I'll also throw in there, my daughter said to me this morning, I was sharing with her my experience in the first couple of days at my new employment, and the location where my office is, as I was going, it's a large business and a large building. And as I was going through and being introduced and kind of meeting people, they were asking me where my office was. and I was trying to describe where it was located, and nobody really understood because, of course, I don't know the whole history of the company. So one thing led to another, and I called it Foosball Lane. My office is on Foosball Lane because on my office, it's a hallway with nothing on there except my office and the foosball. And instantly, all day long, people were coming by my office going, hey, I heard you were on Foosball Lane. And this is really about how we impact culture. It's such a great example because it's what you bring to it. And in 2 minutes, you can inspire such a change in emotion and welcoming and investment and openness. So anyway, my daughter mentioned that to me this morning and thought that was relevant. I thought, actually, that is a good example. All right, you can go to the next slide. So really, what is a company culture? I mean, my gosh, we could be here all day talking about what it is and what it is not. But honestly, culture is just really about all the influences all of us have had in all of our life experiences. It can be cultural influences we bring from our neighborhoods, our communities, our families, our own personal history, and then from a work perspective, if you've had experiences in small organizations or larger or public or private, there's so many factors. There is not, in my opinion, a textbook definition other than culture is often described as the environment within an organization. But it's a lot more complex than that. And I think you probably all know that and have felt that. And ultimately, from my perspective, this is all about us. It's about every single person on this call and what we each bring to the table every day and what we also inspire in those that are with us. It's about us individually and collectively as a team. Some of you may have heard of the book from some years past here, Culture Eats Strategy for Lunch. And wow, that book can be resold again today because it is absolutely as relevant as when it was first written as it is today. Culture is absolutely the base and foundation of all that we do. If we don't have a great culture, the opportunity for success diminishes immensely. So it's really about what we bring to the table and how we collectively work to be able to reach the organization's goals. Okay, next slide. Often I hear a lot of people say, hey, culture is all the great swag we get. And culture is about pool tables and beer carts and all that kind of stuff. Well, culture is actually not about those things, although they have an important place in our workplaces or in our personal lives, because these are examples of tools. And over time, those kind of examples and tools will shift as our culture shifts. But ultimately, any tools that we can bring into our workforce that help us engage with one another and bring our best selves to the table with one another, that's what it's about. We can't do our best work living in a cave. And Lord knows we are trying right now during the pandemic, living in caves. And it is only because we've got beautiful technology that usually works pretty good these days to be able to interact with each other. But if we didn't have this technology and we're all working from our homes, we're not getting there. So I don't know what the world's going to look like as we keep evolving, but ultimately it's going to be a blend of where we've been, where we are now, and how we work together to figure out a balance that makes sense for our businesses. It's ultimately about us and our behaviors and less about how many beer carts or elements of swag we have. So that is a common theme we want to keep thinking about as we go through this. Okay, next slide. Ooh, pineapple. So you look at this pineapple and you're wondering what this is about. Well, when you're at work, sometimes we have difficult moments of change we have to go through. Sometimes our staff and our employees, we feel worry, concern, or fear about stuff that's happening in the organization. And the result of that sometimes is that we might behave or feel defensive, or we may not come to the table with good listening skills, or we may share frustration and anger with one another. This is stuff that just happens to all of us as human beings. We all have good days and bad days, and that kind of happens. So what pineapple is about, one day, one of my coworkers on our leadership team He and I were very, very good friends and still are today, but he had a very hard time with change. And so one day, as we were going through it, while we could collaborate really well, sometimes we were on opposite sides of the fence. So he came into my office one day and he said, pineapple. And I'm like, yeah. And ultimately what it was, is it became a catchword that we used when he was upset and he wanted to put a pause in the space. So he said, every time you're pissing me off, I'm saying pineapple. And I said, well, every time you're not listening, I'm saying pineapple. And we had a really cute dialogue with it. And ultimately, you guys, what it really did is it created a moment when we're at work and we have friendships and we're collaborating, but there's stress and there's emotion and there's passion, right? And when that happens, if you can help one another, see that moment and just breathe, just take a minute to pause. Whether it's something light and silly like a word or a phrase or whatever it is for you, but something like this can be quite fun. I would come into my office and there'd be like pineapple pencil erasers all over my office. So we eventually made it quite a lot of fun. And I still use this today everywhere that I work. It's amazing. Okay, next slide. And so as I was thinking about, oh gosh, pineapple is so great. I use it all the time. I still use it every day. I wanted to share with you a few of my personal life hacks that I've stolen from others or that are my own, that actually, I promise you, these that we're going to go through, I use every single day at work. And I encourage you to steal these, manipulate them, whatever is good for you, or come up with your own. But the more you have things like this that help you be present, help you embrace your moment, help you bring your best to the work that you do and to the people you care for at work, and how you inspire people. That's what these are about. And we all get very, what do you call it? In a whirlwind, right? Work is busy and demanding and challenging. And many of us are very A students, and we want to get it all done and do it right and do it well and meet our deadlines. And that is beautiful, but it can also get us into a little bit of a whirlwind where we're not being as present, or we're maybe not asking real good questions or listening real well. So that's what this is about. So I want to share some of these with you and inspire you to, again, feel free to steal them all or tweak them however you like. But pineapple we talked about, and it could be anything. And by the way, when we did pineapple and I told my family about it, I'm not going to share them with you, but I think I have 3 names in Susie West's house that people call out when I am not the way they want me to be. So you can use these hacks at your house too, just so you know. All right, equal to or better is one of my favorites. I have had to lead a lot of change over 35 years in my organizations. And when you are leading, and sometimes it is interpreted as forcing change, people get emotional and scared and sometimes defensive. And what has helped me a lot is to say to my team, hey, it's equal to or better. Do just as good today as you did yesterday, and grab one more nugget of what we talked about today. That could be thanking somebody, demonstrating appreciation, bringing a new skill or talent or idea to a situation, or challenging status quo. Could be anything, right? And this equal to or better, I have found, and my team has told me, has helped them re-level and reduce the stress of having to achieve and meet everything. It's just so much and so overwhelming sometimes. So if you can look through a funnel of, hey, I'm going to do just as good today as yesterday and a little bit better, it just kind of helps us evolve a little bit more slowly. And the more you do that, you can speed it up and inspire others. The next one I have is we can do it. And that is my sister. She's on the call here somewhere, and she is a Benny grad as well. So her big thing is, oh yeah, you can see her, Rosie the Riveter. And if you're too young to know who she is, go look her up. But she is a strong woman. And this is a great one that has everything to do with all hands on deck. We have each other's back, and we can do it collectively. And I'm in love with this one, and I use it at work, and you better believe we use it at home. So that's a fun one. The next one that I wanted to share with you is from my great-great-grandmother. So I found this in a historical search that my great-great-grandmother had this one, and it's about what her phrase is let go, let your brain serve you, and let your heart own you. And really what it meant to me is let's breathe, let go, use our talents, our skills, our abilities, but then lead with your heart, with kindness and respect. It's a balance, and culture's about that, a balance of history and present and inspiring the future. So I'm in love with that one. And you may find if you do Ancestry, who knows, you might open a secret box one day. And then the next one I love is grow through what you go through. That's very common. A lot of you may have heard that, but it's so important to learn, and learn some more. And sharing and being vulnerable and being open without judgment is all about a great culture. Okay, next slide. The next one that I have that was super important during the pandemic, and this was inspired in the pandemic, is lead with grace. I had to tell my staff 1,000 times and myself every morning coming into work, lead with grace. Assume the best in people first, don't judge, trust, ask good questions, but listen. And as we went through the pandemic, at least in my organization at the time, it's very production and manufacturing, and everybody had to work, and you have a whole world of people at the time. People observed it as people were able to stay home with their family and their pets, and then all these other hard workers had to come into work every day and be confronted with the worries of sharing this pandemic. And it's a lot different environment for those that were able to go home and those that physically had to come into the office. So lead with grace became kind of my own personal mantra as I was assisting and trying to lead people through that. And that really helped us a lot. The next one is respecting history. And we're going to talk about this in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to pass on that one and reference it in a moment. And then this one I really, really love. You only know what you know when you know it. And I will tell you, I think I say that 1,000 times a day, because you do only know what you know when you know it. And when you get to work and you meet somebody and you assume they know everything, the truth is none of us know what we don't know until we figure it out. So we have to start respecting one another and recognizing we all have wonderful experiences and talents and moments to bring to the table, but we also have a lot that we get to learn. And if we can be vulnerable and we join an organization, whether you're at my stage in my career and I'm bringing something to the table now, I think my people appreciate, I can go, hey, I know a lot, but there's a lot I don't know. And I'm excited to learn it from all of you, because again, it's a balance of learning from those that are further in our career and those that are just joining. We all have so much to bring. And the last one, and our timing is good, we're hitting right about halfway through. And the last one is a story I'm telling myself. And some of you may have heard of Brene Brown. She's the author of Rising Strong and many other books. This woman, I think, is fabulous for great life hacks. And this is one of my favorite, the story I'm telling myself. And I use it at work every single day. When somebody comes in my office and they're emotional and they're stressed or they're judging someone, it's another thing to just bring the energy down and talk about, well, let's talk about what story you are telling yourself. What are you telling yourself about how that person is behaving or how they acted in that meeting or what their assumptions are of you? And the second you can get people to share kind of what's in their mind and what their assumptions are, the second you can break it down and go, oh my gosh, that's not actually what it is at all. And often that's the case. And so this is a great tool that we can use individually in any role that we're in. And again, I'm going to repeat, you can use this at home. This is a great one, and we use that all the time here. So I encourage you to use that. So those are some of my favorites. And while that took a few minutes to go through, I hope some of those were useful, or they might inspire you to steal them or tweak them or make them your own. So anyway, there you go. All right, next page. So right now, what we're going to do is take a couple of minutes and talk about how important it is. And I know I'm being repetitive here, but you are culture. It is up to each of you to shape the culture. You can do it individually and collectively on how you inspire others, but each of us individually makes the difference. And that's what this is all about. If you don't get anything out of it, that's what it is. Okay, next page. Okay, so let's talk about past, present, future. This is another thing that I have found that has worked really well for me in my career from going way back. And I break it always out into past, present, future. Respecting history is foundational. It is critical in work and in home. And as we collaborate with one another, that we begin, I think that you begin with respect. We're not here if it wasn't for the history and the foundation and the DNA of those before us. What I like to do with history when I join an organization or am working in it, I often find new people join an organization and sometimes they come with judgment. Why are you doing that? That's dumb. We don't do it that way. And sometimes it can come across very judgy. So I spend a lot of time encouraging people instead to really respect history and take a look at what has our history done, where you have history and then you have elements that you bring forward, like we mentioned with St. Ben's, or you have history and there's elements of it that were great back then, but you don't need them. It doesn't make sense in where we're headed or where we are today. So you thank that history and you release it. And then there's other things that you're like, actually, there's a good nugget here. It worked great then, won't work perfect now, but let's tweak it. So that's a really important message I want to convey about history. You can bring it forward. You can bring it forward and tweak it a little bit with new technology and ideas and talents and strengths, or you can say, thank you, that was awesome when we needed it and we don't anymore, and you can leave it. And by the way, this is a great way to reference work processes. Help yourself streamline processes. Move your business forward and challenge yourself. Why am I doing that report? Well, we're doing it because we always did it. We'll challenge that on why we need that today. And that's part of culture. The second part of this is being present, participating and being present now. How can you engage today, create something today, and make an impact right now? And I love to look at this past, present, future with thumbprints. And I kind of like reference the history as the foundation would be the thumbprints that someone, our ancestors or our family or our parents or whoever brought to the table. That's your thumbprint. And in the present, what impact are you making today? Where are you leaving your thumbprint right now on the work you're doing? Is it on people? Is it on processes? Is it on new technology? Where are you leaving your mark? So I challenge you to think about your mark. And the third part was be how you inspire and impact the future. What are you building today? You personally, what are you building today to last in the future? How are you nurturing and caring for other people in any role you're in? It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a leader, but how are you nurturing others to help them bring success to the company today and as we move forward? And how do you inspire others to leave their own thumbprints? This is really, I think, an important nugget to challenge all of us to think about: the respecting of the history, how we be present, and we personally figure out how we bring value, leave our thumbprints, and how we inspire others to do that. And if we can do that well, that's another great way to impact culture. And by the way, have a lot of fun. All right, next slide. So I thought, in reference to past, present, future, I would tie it to St. Ben's because that's who you people are, St. John's and St. Ben's. So what I love about this is, let's look at our history. Literally over 100 years at St. John's and St. Ben's, little different timelines for both, but over 100 years, these schools were led by monks and sisters. How cool is that? St. Ben's history, while St. Ben's was founded in 1913, went back to 1846. But think about how the world has changed since then. And midway through in the 60s and more recently for St. John's, that the organizations were led by lay presidents. And guess what? Today, now as we're preparing today, going into our future, there's a search to find a joint leader for both organizations. Talk about history. What a beautiful legacy to see how this organization is bringing that. I mean, that's why we went to this school, right? Like, you get this beautiful legacy and you get to engage in it, involved in it, yet you also get to see us be forward, like forward thinking and on the edge and shifting and changing. And that is what this is about, this past, present, and future. Again, I'm going to repeat it because it's so important. Respect history, be present with what you bring today, and be excited on what you can bring and inspire for the future. And that's what St. John's and St. Ben's does so phenomenally well. Okay, next slide. I wanted to share a couple of the traditions that St. John's and St. Ben's, besides the ones I mentioned earlier, also have been brought through, which is kind of fun. I mean, just even look at our names, Benny's and Johnny's, that's still the same. The athletics is such an important core part of St. John's and St. Ben's culture from so long ago. Winning on the field, winning academically, winning with caring for one another, winning. That's important. The Benny Ball and the respect of the relationships from the parents and the children is so fabulous. All the beautiful candle lighting ceremonies are so wonderful. And then, you know, again, I used pine stock earlier, but I'd mentioned that. And if you look at St. Ben's history and St. John's history, the values that were founded 100+ years ago, community, hospitality, service, are still absolutely sustained in everything we do today. And I think that is remarkable and marvelous. Okay, next slide. So this section now, and for a time point, we're looking really good. We're at 8:38 people. We're on target. What about that? That doesn't happen much on culture. So this is great. So now what I want to talk about, as I have heard from a lot of people being very excited to talk about the pandemic, because boy, this is relevant to everybody's life right now. I think the things that we talked about earlier, to me, why they're important is because that's what you can bring to this topic. And this topic is what has happened during the pandemic. Besides, we've all been flipped upside down. That's true. But what are the silver linings? What great things have happened during this pandemic? What challenges has it brought? And what opportunities has it brought? And I'll share for you personally, you know, this is, you can look through the lens, of course, at work, that's part of the topic, but culture is about at home as well. And these, you may have experienced all three of these at home as well. For me, a silver lining is my son and daughter came home. And when you have adult kids that are 25, 30, and so on, and they decide it's going to be fun to hang out at home and work from home, it is pretty darn fun. So I always dreamed when I was younger that it would be fun to have my kids around where we could have a glass of wine together and share the day. And for us, it has been a beautiful silver lining to have 2+ years with our family being quite together. And, you know, that's not the case for everybody. A lot of people have experienced a lot of isolation and a lot of challenge with young kids going through the schools and having to work through those demands. So there's also a lot of challenges. So what I want to do now is for us to really think about the different impacts that we've all experienced, because this is where I challenge you to reflect on the conversation we had about past, present, and future. Every organization you guys work for is going to be at a different pace. The world isn't all of a sudden going to wake up on a date and we're all going to be healed and evolved. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen over time, and that's what happens with culture. What didn't happen over time is the pandemic. That happened. It was an impact. We got hit. In an organization, you may lose your leader and get a new leader. It's a hit. There are things like that that can happen very abruptly to a work culture or at home, And there's other things that happen over time. So we're going through something that had a big impact, but as we work through it in each of the organizations, we're going to have to respect that our organizations are going to have to go at their own pace. And as each of us goes home and we talk about what's happening in our work with our friends and our family, we may have a lot of strong emotions about what our family and friends are doing at their works versus what we are, or may have judgment that our work is moving too fast to make us go back and our work is moving too slow. There's a lot of emotions and feelings that can play in here. So I'm going to ask you all, as you are part of this, to lead with grace, have your voice heard, be vulnerable, have your voice heard, because what you guys are experiencing is so important in how we evolve successfully forward. But have grace and respect that it's not easy. This is going to be complicated in some circumstances. So if you can challenge yourself to think about the types of experiences you're having in the last, let's say, couple of years going through this that are real silver linings at work, and how you can work with your leaders to bring those forward, that would be a home run. Or the challenges that you've had to work through, which again, a lot of people might be quite isolated at home and might want a little more face time, and how you can bring some of those ideas to your leaders to determine how might you approach overcoming some of those challenges and the impact. And then the opportunities is really an opportunity for us to like brainstorm together. And I challenge you also to remember that those that are more senior in your organizations, maybe closer to retirement, or the people who've been there 5 or 10 years, and then yourselves, we all get to work together on this. We all get to work equally on this because we haven't been through it. So please don't assume that somebody else has the answers, because we don't. We might have ideas. So this is about challenging one another to like allow yourself to be vulnerable, share ideas, and challenge your coworkers and your friends to share ideas without judgment and with grace, so we can evolve through it. Because I promise you, some days are going to be harder than others. So we have to help each other. So go back to those slides when you get stressed, or call me. Okay, next slide. All right, we are good on times. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And so let's open it up now if anybody would like to share anything on what they've experienced through the pandemic. Again, it may be, and again, I don't want you to feel forced to share this response as it relates just to work, because of course, home and work are very relevant balances today. But if you have any examples you'd like to share for silver linings or challenges or opportunities, I'd love to welcome those. And then again, Allie is going to either call on you guys or see if anybody's got anything to share that you can share in the chat.
And feel free to send me a direct message if you don't want everyone to see it. I'm happy to then share it anonymously. So Sue, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can share, I guess, a silver lining I've seen. A lot of my clients, I do consulting, were forced out of their box. Yeah. And so that's been really good. And so a good example is we have a development team with one of my clients, and they actually are 120% more productive than they've ever been. And they never would have thought that. And so it forced these leaderships out of that comfort zone and out of that box. And it was very helpful, and it pushed the new normal. I guess we can use those terms, but it pushed that new normal and the acceptance of having people work anywhere. So I thought that was really nice to see, because I think a lot of people have been asking for it or wanting it, and companies were doing it, but it forced everyone to quickly respond and do that.
I love that. I think that's a fabulous example. And I also feel like, talking about being forced out of it, it also, on a reciprocal nature, forced the leaders to trust more. And boy, was that hard for some organizations, right? But it really shows a flip where leaders had to trust and allow, without judgment, There are people to do just what you're saying. And what a gift to see the results, because honestly, one of the common leans, the silver linings that is, shared broadly, even if you just do any searches on it, is how productive businesses have found that their employees have been working from home and or having that kind of flexibility. So thank you for sharing that, because you are exactly right. And I love that it's forcing the leaders to trust more. That's important. So thank you. Who else has got one?
I'm going to call on Kayla. She contributed, and then after Kayla, Becca.
Okay. All right, for full disclosure, Kayla's my daughter, heads up. I didn't but
well, I was just gonna say, working from home, I feel like it's really hard to catch up with coworkers. Like, I can get lost in my work and I'll just like be head down, and then I'm like, weeks go by and I'm like, I don't know anything about my coworkers' personal life or how their daughter's dance competition went. And that part for me is like hard, because I like connecting with people and that's what makes work fun for me. So it just makes you force more like setting up individual Zoom calls just to be like, all right, we're going to catch up over lunch, and forcing that time, which feels kind of awkward. But then when you do it, it becomes more natural. But that's something I miss from being in the office all the time.
I think that's a great example. And that brings us back to like encouraging and challenging all of you guys to share those, as you start working through it with your organization, and what aspiring towards a new normal looks like in some kind of a balance, because that camaraderie, that's why people put the pool tables and foosball lane in place, right? They put those in there to create camaraderie. And certainly it's a lot more difficult to have those experiences on Zoom. At least with Zoom, you can see each other. That's a little more helpful than just being on a phone call, conference call, like what happened in the past. But I think that's very relevant. And I hear a lot from my employees, the concern similar to what you're saying, Kayla, about, gosh, when I went to work in the office every day, I knew when my day started and I knew when my day ended. And when I got in the car and I drove home, as soon as I got in the car, I called my family or my friends, and I knew that my workday mostly had ended. And so then it allowed me to be quite present with your family when you got in the door, right? And now today, what I hear my people say is, my God, like, talk about work-life balance, lots of perks, but I don't know when on earth my day starts or ends, because people call me all the time. People text me all the time. People email me all the time. People expect stuff from me all the time. And when I'm cooking dinner for my kids, I still feel like I have work that I've got to do and I've got to get back to, because I was distracted all day homeschooling my kids or caring for them or whatever those kind of situations are. So that is also, I think, going to be a really important thing that all of us together are going to have to go through. Thanks for sharing that. That's a really good one. Becca.
Yeah. So on the flip side, I'll share an opportunity that, really my organization being more in leadership development. So we have a lot of Zoom meetings just like this. And so it was a huge innovation for us to be able to bring our in-person events online and hold them virtually. And we're going to be continuing to do that going forward, even though we'll also go back to in-person. So having hybrid services that way. And it's amazing because even other companies I've talked to, technology-wise, innovations that maybe would have taken 5 years or kind of were like a backseat priority, all of a sudden it was in crisis mode, you have to just move forward. And so I know so many organizations have made those technological advances in 5 weeks instead of 5 years. And so when you think about the productivity, like you mentioned earlier, it's just been a major benefit. So thinking about now how do we balance it all out, right? How do we take the good things that came out of the pandemic, but also then like marry it with the challenges like Kayla was speaking to.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think the more each of us individually can try to look at what experiences we're going through, and hopefully I'm going to challenge you to talk about it, with your coworkers and your family and your friends as, let's call it positively or optimistically as possible, because I get there's a lot of emotions in this and there's a lot of challenges. And what I hear percolate on those more stressful conversations is sometimes people get blinded by exhaustion and fear and emotions about the haves and the have-nots, what's right, what's not right. Why is this organization get this gift and we don't? It is going to be challenging as we all kind of work through that. And some of the results that are happening, or the consequences that are happening now, is as organizations begin to, individually determine to bring people back, other employees are like, well, then I'm not working here anymore. I want to work from home 100%. So, I'm leaving. And that's happening. And I think sometimes people do that emotionally and abruptly with an assumption, well, the whole world has changed and I can work from home full-time anywhere. And by the way, it might be the case momentarily, but all of our businesses are going to have to keep healing and adjusting. And we all have to find our spot, but it doesn't help if we lead with anger or defensiveness or meanness. It doesn't help. We have to all remember, none of us have this figured out. And I can't stress enough, if you leave today with one thing, please know, none of us have this figured out. There isn't a magic ball. There isn't a magic wand. None of us have done this before. I've been doing HR 35 years and I don't have a clue some days. I do have a clue that it's important to lead with grace and kindness and respect. And I have a clue it's important to listen and hear people's concerns, but I'm not going to be able to solve everything myself. I'm not going to be able to convince everybody of this, that, and the other thing. So please help your organizations by leading with kindness, helping sort this out, bringing enthusiasm and passion, as you've shared today, Becca, even you, like, it's just so exciting to think about what you have the gift to bring forward. And what Mike had shared earlier, it's so important to be excited about having leaders respect our ability to work independently and not judge and assume the worst in us, but rather rise above it and assume the best. And if we can lead that way and behave that way and assume the best in our leaders, as we ask our leaders to assume the best in us, then we can kind of, I think, strive for this balance where we can be actual human beings. And if we have an issue and we have to leave a little early, nobody has to be judgy about it. We can go, oh, okay, that's life right now. And then you shift and you adjust and come back. So I love that. That's awesome. Does anybody else have anything to share? We still have a little bit more time as we're kind of wrapping this up. Who else has got an example they might like to share?
So I have one from Erin, and I'm probably just going to read it here. But Erin has young kids, and so she said, acceptance to show up as you are, kids and all, the increased flexibility and compassion and empathy for everyone's unique situation.
I love that. And that is so relevant. And I think, as I reflect on my experience, I mentioned earlier how excited I was to have my adult kids home. On the flip side, I have so much respect and passion for those that really had those challenges of supporting their kids, whether they were in kindergarten or junior high or older. It all came with new things that none of us know how to navigate. You're just trying to figure it out day by day. So I super respect that. And I hope that the HR leaders and the business leaders in each of our organizations continues to have openness and kindness and flexibility and understanding as we try to work through this, because it's tiring. And honestly, ultimately, it just gets tiring. So if we can find a way to have it lighter and more kind and warm, so you can try to do the best work that you can when you can, that's really critical. So I love that example. And I have to say, what I'd like to do is, as we wrap up here, show you a slide about some trends that kind of workplace environments are anticipating in 2022. And so this is just a few examples. You guys can look at this later. I think they're going to share the presentation, but here are some other impacts, for good things. And then the next slide. And then these were some examples of some of the challenges. We talked a little bit about social isolation, where employees are working from home alone. That's not the case for everyone, but it is the case for a lot of people. And that can be very, very difficult. Okay, next one. So this is just a report that I found from Vantage Circle that they were kind of summarizing some core work trends that people were anticipating going in the future. Now there's lots of them out there, right? So I read tons and tons of different ones from different organizations, but I found this one to kind of summarize it most holistically in the most simplistic way. So this is really one group's perspective on what we all might be able to anticipate businesses focusing on or making a priority as we evolve through this. And it doesn't mean just 2022, right? It might be 2022 and as we evolve forward, but really prioritizing employee engagement. Kayla talked a little bit about that. How do you engage people differently if you can't be with them in person, at least a little bit, right? The flexible work schedules is so important. That one feels like people are really embracing well, because we're just having to be more dynamic. And I think with the gift of technology, it's really helping it be more able to be flexible. Benefits that matter, and that's referencing how do we support people with all the examples you guys shared. So that has to do with parents that are caring for their kids, and what other benefits maybe have we not thought about in the past that maybe we should be thinking about now. An emphasis on all of our mental health wellness. That's really, really important right now, as there's so many new demands that are on us that we haven't been through before. Mindfulness at work, reducing stress. That's a great one. Like I think a lot of businesses have created spaces in their organization for taking a breather, but even now to be able to make it a little bit more mindful, where maybe that space isn't all pool tables and beer, but maybe it's calming and yoga, I don't know, but stuff to like relax it a little bit. Certainly equality in the workforce and the places that we work is so important and fabulous, and wow, is this amazing part that we get to be a part of history as it finds new ways to care about and respect diversity. I mean, I'm really inspired by that. I hope you guys are, because boy, that's beautiful. Employee experience, and you guys have talked a little bit about that from holistically on how you get to bring different things to the table, and then focusing on employee development. And some of these things, it's going to be the responsibility of leaders and HR people to make sure we don't forget these, but I challenge you to help us by bringing it to us and caring about it and making it present and mindful if it appears that we're prioritizing other things as we start to shift. So, okay, next slide. This is the end, and we are 1 minute, people. What can you do? And we have 1 minute to go. Okay, next slide. I will tell you your homework. I have a homework slide. So the homework slide is, you guys hopefully got a little nibble on a bunch of ideas today. And I challenge you to come up with one thing you can do today, not tomorrow, not when you get home. It's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock now. So what can you do today to have an impact on your culture, make a difference? It can be very, very little, like thanking someone or showing appreciation. Or you can do something big. You can come up with a process or an idea or tweak something, whatever you want to do. But I challenge you to do it right now. Okay, that's it. Anybody got any questions? You don't have any time to, no, I'm just kidding. That's it.
Well, thanks so much, Sue, and everyone, thanks for joining today. We really appreciate Sue taking the time, and we appreciate all of you taking the time and learning how you can impact your work culture. So I'm looking forward to hearing how at our next event, everyone's saying, yeah, all the Bennies and Johnnies, they're the ones impacting our culture. So please stay tuned. This spring, we are going to be having a professional development event in person. It's mainly just going to be networking and kind of celebrating the series that we've done, but we'd love to see you there, and you've all been great supporters over the years, so thank you. And Sue, one more round of applause. Thanks for all of your advice. You were great, very passionate, and I know made a big impact, so thank you.
Also, I welcome any of you. She can, Allie can provide you with my email.
Yep.
And if anybody would like to talk further or get ideas or put a little networking group together, however I can support and help you, I would love it. So don't be shy about reaching out to me in any way that I can provide you support individually or collectively. Please don't be shy. I'm super happy to do that.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with Sue.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a
Thanks.
great
It
day.
was great. Nice job.
Thank you.